Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are continuing to count down our top 100 favorite board games of all time.
Today we are counting down the teens, going from 20 all the way to 11.
And what I was doing in my teens, at least the start of them, was hanging out in the 80s, and that's what you do in our game. It's 1986. You got 1 week left of summer, and you've only got 1 week left to back this. This closes on September 20th, so go check it out. In the words of this is the day. So please go take a look. But right now, let's take a look at our number 20.
My number 20 is Sea Salt and Paper, and this is a fantastic card game. First of all, the art is incredible. It's pictures of origami, and it's like origami animals and all like sea creatures. And it's so hard to not always choose the penguins because the penguins look adorable. And I think there's just like the right amount of different types of cards that you can get. So I like just that every game always plays a little bit differently. I've had some games where we are really competitive with the shark and the swimmer, and we're constantly stealing cards. I've had other games where I've had barely any cards that I've played as a like face down pair, and instead I'm collecting different sets. And I think it's just such a clever mechanic with the ability to end a round, where you can just like say stop and everyone gets their points. But most interestingly, and what we tend to always do, is call last chance, where everyone else gets one more turn to try and beat your score. If they don't succeed, you get more points, and they only score like for their largest color set. So it's worth doing, but you have to be confident that you're going to win. And we really push that. We've had games where like one of us has waited until we've had like 13 points before we've called last chance just to make sure that we get it. And so it is my number 20.
My number 20 is Clank Legacy. And this is probably my favorite Legacy game that we have played. And we've played a bundle of Legacy games too, but I really like this experience. And partly that's because I enjoy Clank. It's a simple game. It's just a kind of a simple deck builder. You're diving down into this dungeon. You're going to steal treasure. You're going to take that treasure back out. But there is a fun push or luck element to that, where the best treasure's at the bottom. And if other people just kind of go in a little and get out of there, they can make your life very tricky, because if you don't get out over this line before you die, you just lose everything. And I definitely have done that a couple of times. But I really like the Legacy version, both because it is honestly a little bit funny. It's not like you're not going to laugh out loud all the time, but I think I did on occasion. And it's got just fun little story elements, but not too much, but I feel like just the right amount. But also, you are doing a lot of fun things to the board. You're adding a lot of neat stuff that changes the game in big ways. And doing that makes this kind of interesting thing where there's a bit of like a tentative alliance, where Clank is quite a competitive game, but you have to work together to be like, I really want to know what this is. Please don't leave the dungeon until we've like just done this one little thing, and then we'll all get out of here. And I really like that weird like tentative balance. This was just a terrific experience. Even at just 2 players, this was a terrific experience. And it is my number 20.
My number 19 is Dwellings of Eldervale. And I think, first of all, this has my most favorite component in board games, and that's the roofs that you put on the actual people, which look great. But I think what's really interesting is I think there are more and more games that are kind of like mashing European and American mechanics together. And this is a really good example, because it is a worker placement game. You are putting workers, you're putting them onto the board, you're collecting resources, you're doing a tableau building with your cards, but there's also a lot of battling involved, because you can get people off of those spaces by fighting them. And it has a really simplified battle system that I really like, where it's just like the highest dice value wins. So Sean might be coming in and rolling like 4 dice, and I might be only rolling 1. But if he rolls a 5 and I roll a 6, then I would win. And I like that it's like a really stacking your odds system, but it's still really simple. And so I think this does a really great job of combining those elements. And I also I love the asymmetry because there's all these different factions that you can play. And so many things can change because of like the cards that you're adding to your tableau. And it is my number 19.
My number 19 is Draftosaurus, and I love this game. I love it because it's got so many dinosaurs. I love it because it's basically a roll and write, but without the writing. I love it because it's just a really solid like draft and pass game, and it works surprisingly well at 2 players. And if you haven't played Draftosaurus, you just got a big bag of dinosaurs. You pull out some of those dinosaurs at the start of each round. You're going to take a dinosaur, pass the rest of the dinosaurs around. You're putting your dinosaur down onto this board. That's going to score in all these different ways. That's pretty much the game. But what I really like is the 2-player version. And a lot of these sort of drafting passing games don't really work at 2 players, but this one really does because it does the simple thing of you're going to take one, you're going to throw one away. And I love the meanness of that because you look at the other player's board and you're like, now you're going to get these 2 blues. You definitely do not want those 2 blues. They're going to ruin everything for you, but I'm throwing away this red that I know you want. I really like that. It's such a solid piece of interaction in a really cool game that's just filled with dinosaurs, what's not to like, and it's my number 19.
My number 18 is Horrified, and Horrified was the second review video we did on our channel because I was excited to talk about it. And now, 5 years later, I'm still excited to talk about it. And for the very first Horrified, it's all Universal monster themed. And so we watched all of those old movies, which I then appreciated playing in this shared world. And what Horrified does really interestingly is all of the monsters get defeated in their own thematic way. So it's a slightly different puzzle. And they've released like 4 more boxes since, which all do things just a little bit differently. And I really like the most recent one, which is Dungeons and Dragons theme, because it uses like a D20 in an interesting way. But my favorite is the original, and it's my number 18.
My number 18 is Near and Far. Near and Far does such a good job of being like an abstracted adventure game, but still feeling like an adventure game, because a big part of it is just you're in this little town up at the top of the board and you're getting resources and you're kind of gearing up for your adventure, getting your like giant bird thing that you ride and your tortoise and all that normal adventure stuff. But then you go out to the world, and it's cool because there's this big map book. It's got all these different maps. A lot of them have their own little like fun quirks, and I like that. But you go on this adventure, which is pretty simple as well. You just move around, put down tents. You're kind of getting stuff, but in a different way now. But the really neat thing is the actual adventures, because this is maybe the best written game that I have played, because you've got these kind of like choose your own adventure little things for all these different characters, and all of them have their own story, and some of those stories intertwine, and I really like when that happens as well. But you actually learn about them, and I actually care about these stories by the time I get to the end. This is the only, well, not quite the only, but one of the very few games where that is true, and where I'll actually choose the story campaign mode over the like arcade one game mode. And both are super solid in this, but that campaign mode is so good. And this is my 18.
My number 17 is Caverna the Cave Farmers. And this is a farming game. But what I really like about Caverna is there are a lot of different avenues that you can go down. First of all, because you live in these caves, you have a bunch of different rooms that you can build. And there are like a ton that you can add. And those will drive you down different directions and get you to try different strategies. But also, one of the things I always do is the animal husbandry. And I like how thematic it is, because you can have like a whole ton of sheep as long as you have a whole bunch of sheepdogs. You also have these different size paddocks that can hold so many animals. You also have donkeys that can live in your cave. So I like that I can choose to just have a whole bunch of animals if I want. And I like the lightheartedness of it because you can go for adventures and you can like wish for children, and it just doesn't seem as serious as potentially some farming games. And it's my number 17.
My number 17 is Kanban, and I'm specifically picking the driver's edition, the slightly older version with the clunkier, different colored, like brighter cars. Kanban EV, no problem if that's the one that you love, but I like this older, slightly uglier version of the game. But anyway, this is my favorite Vitel Lacerda game, and he's famous for these heavy games with all of these interconnected mechanisms, and they're all really good games, but this for me is the smoothest of them and kind of the most satisfying. And Kanban itself is, at least from what I understand, kind of this idea of efficiency, and particularly when it comes to automotives. And here you're running an automotive factory, you're getting blueprints, you're getting parts, you're making cars, you're test driving those cars, you're doing all that stuff, but you really need to do it in the right order, and all of it costs you time. And I really like that time is your resource in this game. That is your main resource. I think that is a super clever mechanic. Also, how you're just kind of moving along to like that end point, or Sandra is moving along and she is causing you all sorts of trouble. And you got two ways to play too, with nice Sandra or mean Sandra. That's really cool. Just if you're getting into Lacerda games, this is the one I would definitely say to start with. There's some other terrific ones too, but I would say start here. And if you can find the driver's edition, start with that one. And that is my 17.
My number 16 is Ultimate Railroads. And this one surprised me. It has a train theme, which I'm not normally drawn to, but it's more abstracted, and it's just using the trains to be able to build like these train tracks. And it's this track climbing game. And so first of all, for the Ultimate Edition, it comes with 4 different boards that all play completely differently. But what I really like is even just within each board, it has these 3 distinct tracks that you can go up. And you want to try and go up all of them, because one of them will let you put out other tracks, which you'll need to do to be able to get bonuses. Other ones will give you a whole bunch of bonuses, and they all intertwine. So it feels like this puzzle you're constantly trying to sort out of how far to go up one track and how far to go up another. That is more surprising than you probably expect. And on your first round, you can't accomplish a lot and you're only getting like a handful of points. But by the final round, you're getting like over 100 points. And it's a really satisfying puzzle, and it is my number 16.
My number 16 is Root. And this is a game that really, it is best if you're playing it 4 players, and it is best if everyone knows how all the other factions work. But when you've got those 2 things, this is such a terrific experience. And this is as close as I've come to playing a coin game. And from what I understand, it is kind of close. I really do want to play Cuba Libre as well, but this game just has all the different factions have such interesting different ways of playing, that you're the Woodland Alliance and you like kind of guerrilla warfare, or you're the Vagabond. And I know people's feelings about the Vagabond, but that first time that you play the Vagabond and when you kind of figure them out too, and that's, I think, the thing that I really like about this, that all the factions have quite a bit of depth that you're figuring out. Now that the game's got, 10 different factions, I think? And hopefully there's even more coming out. Every time they come up, I get so excited to like experiment with the new factions and how are they going to play against all the other factions? How does everyone bounce off of each other? It's a game that when you're into it, you get really into it. And I am quite into it. And it is my 16. And we're going to be right back with our 15 right after this very important message.
My number 15 is Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And this is a game that typically you need 3 or more players to play, because how it usually works is you're building a castle with your neighbor on your left and with your neighbor on your right, and then your lowest scoring castle is your score. So you're doing it kind of semi-cooperatively. But I love the 2-player variant where you're each building your own castle. And you had mentioned for Draftosaurus how it has a clever drafting mechanic. And this does as well, because you're picking a tile that you really want to add to your castle, and then you have to give your opponent a tile. So you look over at their castle and see which one would cause them the most trouble and which one they don't want to add. And when you get the tile from them, you have to figure out what to do with that. And I like that challenge. And I think the rooms are just really interesting as well, because the bedrooms look really cozy. There's like a pit in the basement and all kinds of crazy basement rooms. And all of the rooms score in slightly different ways. And I think the scoring can sometimes take a while, but I enjoy the scoring because I make us go through what each of our rooms are, and it's part of what I like about the game, and it's my number 15.
My number 15 is Forest Shuffle, and sometimes a game comes out with something that you're just like, why hasn't anyone thought of it? Why didn't I think of this? And this definitely has that, because Forest Shuffle is this genius thing where you're putting your cards underneath the card. You've got this tree, and then you've got cards, and how they're built is you can slide them in either one half or the other half. Some are going to go above, some are going to go below, some are going to go on the sides, and then all of that is going to be this really cool little ecosystem, and all of your trees interact with all of your other trees. So this is really a tableau building game where you're scoring points in a million different ways, and there are so many different ways you're building it, and that's one of the things I really like, that some games you're getting a whole bunch of birds on top of your trees, sometimes you've got butterflies, sometimes you've got mosses that are interacting different ways, or you're collecting salamanders, and then the expansions are adding all different ways to play as well. And you're also watching what your opponent's doing, because a big part of this game is to not let them have those cards that they need, where you know that they've got stuff that really wants to hunt deer, or you've got deer that are connecting with other deer, whatever it is. So I do not want to give Jess deer, but there's this clever mechanic where as soon as there's whatever it is, 10 cards in the middle in the card row, they all go away. So you're trying to hold on to cards and then spend those cards so you can get rid of them so they can never touch them. And there's such an interesting balance in that, and doing what you're doing, trying to stop them from doing what they're doing, but then also shifting gears to play with the cards that you actually have available. Such an interesting game, and it is my 15.
My number 14 is A Feast for Odin. And if you had told me after the first time I played this that this would be in my top 20 games, I would have been surprised, because I didn't really like it. I had to be convinced to play it again, and I'm really glad I was. Because at first it just seemed very overwhelming. You start with this blank, empty board filled with negative spaces, and I tried to fill those spaces as quickly as I could. But once I realized that you've got to use your stuff to make your engine and get more stuff, then it really clicked, and I was able to do a lot more. And there is a lot to do in this game, because there's all kinds of like different other island boards that you can get. You can also visit all kinds of spaces. So maybe you're going hunting and using a dice to get different stuff. You can do animal husbandry. You can also get like these special tiles off of these special boards that can be really handy for filling spaces. But what made me really like this game is once we got the Norwegian expansion, because first of all, it works better for playing at 2 players, and it allows you to play and use cards more, which adds a whole nother layer. And there's this really strong action you can use with your last Viking of the round. And so once we started playing with that, I really appreciate it, and it's my number 14.
My number 14 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. And when I saw that this was coming out, I was saying for months before, I was like, this is going to be my favorite game of this year. There was just something about it. I think it's like the Indiana Jones-ish theme. I really like how it combines deck building with worker placement in a way that is fairly unique, except for Dune Imperium does it kind of similar, and they both came out in that same year, and they've, I think, always been tied together. But Lost Ruins of Arnak has that terrific theme. It also has these turns where the whole game really, I feel like, how am I possibly going to do this? How am I possibly going to get my thing from the bottom of that science track to the top? How am I going to fight all of these different guardians? How am I going to do any of this? And then you magically somehow do. And I love that. I love how clever I feel when I play this, and like my engine works and my cards, even though I'm only playing a few of them and I only have those 2 workers, somehow all of that stuff comes together. And how it does is just really clever game design. And the expansion with the co-op mode, that really kicked this up a notch for me. And this is my 14.
My number 13 is Welcome To, which I think is the best flip and write out there. There's a few things that make it really good. So first of all, I like that it's simultaneous play. So everybody is choosing at once. Secondly, it's this really kind of quaint theme of 1950s building a suburban neighborhood. And you have to number the houses in numerical order. And there is something just like really satisfying about that. And I think there's just enough of the other options that get bundled with the house choice, because there are a few different routes that you can go down. And I really like that they've put out a whole bunch of different types of ways to play this game, because there's different map packs that you can get that are all like really interesting. And I really like the Welcome to the Moon, which is like a campaign that has very different maps, but we have played the original the most. It's still my favorite, and it's my number 13.
My number 13 is Village, and this is one we played first in a board game cafe, and I was instantly enamored with it. I think it took you a little bit longer to warm up to it, but I really like the idea of this, that you're going through different generations and they're aging and they're dying, and the first time you play it you think, I don't want them to die, but really you do. It's almost a race to kill off people, but it's also this interesting efficiency thing where you're trying to, get enough. Obviously you're trying to get resources, you're trying to travel around the world, you're also trying to trade things in at the market, but I like that you don't have to do all of that. You can focus each game in different ways. You're also thinking both about what the action is you're doing and what you're taking off the board to do that action. And I think that is a really underrated part of this game, is how you're doing actions with there's little cubes everywhere. And every time you do an action, you have to take a resource in order to do something. And then you're going to use that resource to do other actions. And so that becomes a really interesting puzzle as well. And then the extra stuff as well that you can add to it to kind of change it from game to game adds a lot to it. But such a creative thing with that killing off people. It's such a good hook. And this is my 13.
My number 12 is Great Western Trail, and I'm going specifically with the New Zealand one. And there are a few reasons. First of all, we lived in New Zealand for a year, so I've got a connection to it. I really like it. Secondly, in the New Zealand one, you are collecting sheep, which I think are cuter than cows. And so that's another reason why. You're wrong. The sheep are definitely...
Cows are adorable.
Cows are adorable. Sheep are even more so. And then other things mechanically I find interesting too, because they add an additional worker. So there's now a shearer that you can use to shear the sheep's wool. So I like that there's another avenue that you can try. And I feel like they've leaned into the deck building a little bit more, because there are these special cards that you get that get added that give you a bonus every time you pull them. So I like that they've added a few different things, but it hasn't become overly complex, and it's my number 12.
My number 12 is Dorfromantik, and a big reason why I like this game is just that Jess likes it so much, and I feel like that really rubs off on me. And what this is it's just a really cozy, chill, cooperative game where you're building out this landscape and you're trying to put tiles next to like tiles, and you're trying to finish off all of these bonuses, and you're taking turns to do that. And it just, everything about it feels like nice and pleasant. It keeps giving you stuff throughout the game, so it's kind of a campaign game, but it's just kind of like drip feeding you these extra little mechanics and new tiles, and every time you play you get these exciting new tiles, and then you just really want to play again and mix those tiles in. And I loved the first game, but I think Sakura really knocked it up a notch for me, because it actually gets pretty tricky even by the middle of that game. You've got so much different stuff that you're mixing together. You're getting really cool, and it's just so much prettier as well. And you've got these wooden bits, and you've got just all this extra cool stuff. And both Dorfromantics have been just a terrific experience. We've played over 100 times between these two games, and I'm sure if Jess has her way, we're gonna play hundreds more times. And I'm pretty happy about that, and it is my number 12.
My number 11 is Dune Imperium, and I like how much of a Dune game this feels. Specifically, how hard everything is to get. It's really tough to get resources, and it's really tough to get points, because it's a race to get to those 10 points. So you're like really clawing at each point. And there's a bunch of different ways you get those points. So you can get them through the politics tracks, but those are hard to do because you need specific cards to be able to go to those spaces. There's also the battles, which are done in a really interesting way because you only have so many troops. So you've got to decide like when you want to send troops in, and keep an eye on what your opponents do, because maybe it's worth like holding back and letting them win this one so that you can win the next one. And then like there's also those intrigue cards where you might be able to get end game points, or it might give you an advantage in battle. And so I like kind of the secrecy that those intrigue cards add and the uncertainty. And then there's also just like the whole deck building element, where you can sometimes have like different faction cards and focus on factions to get bonuses, or be able to get the cards that are worth 1 point, and that can give you an advantage too. And so it just feels very much like Dune. And I like the asymmetric leaders because those give you like slightly different powers and might make you focus on slightly different things. And this is my number 11.
My number 11 is Planet Unknown. And I am a very impatient player. I do not like when it's not my turn. And I think the great thing about Planet Unknown is it's always my turn, because it's always everybody's turn. In Planet Unknown, when it's officially your turn, the only different thing is you're the one who gets to spin around the lazy student, which is not very lazy here, and pick one of the sections. And then everybody else is also going to get to take a tile, but they've got to pick one of the two sections in front of them. So you're going to take one of those tiles, you're going to put it down on this board, and then what you're trying to do is both put those tiles together on the board to fill all of your space, but more importantly, bump up all of these tracks. And bumping up the tracks in this is really, really fun, because a lot of it's going to lead to combos, it's going to lead to different stuff. And some games, you're going to go up different tracks, and that's going to be super different, where you've got water super important maybe one game, or you're adding all those little green things to fill in all of your holes, or you're getting your civilization bonuses. But the thing that really puts this over the top is all of those different corporations and all of the different planets. And they all just have these like sometimes small little rules, sometimes quite big different rules, and they all interact in different ways too. And there's no way we're ever going to play through all the different combinations, but every time we play, it's a different combination, and it's super fun, and it's just so fast, always engaging, and it's my number 11. And that is it. That brings us all the way down to number 11, which means next time we are counting down the top 10.
Thank you so much for watching, and please do check out our Kickstarter the last week of summer. It closes on the 20th of September, which is the last day of summer. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.